They called him the Pleasure Prince, Korean billionaire who had everything except satisfaction. Spent millions on entertainment, women, distractions. Nothing worked. His penthouse was empty. His life was empty. Then his new hotel hired a black maid from Atlanta who changed everything without even trying. Before we continue, can I ask you a question? Where in the world are you watching from? Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel. By the end of this story, you'll understand why he fired his entire staff just to keep her. Hit subscribe and stay with me. Kang Tae-jin owned half of Seoul's entertainment district. Clubs, lounges, private establishments where the wealthy came to forget their problems. At 32, he'd built an empire on pleasure, on giving people what they craved. The irony? He felt absolutely nothing. Every night was the same routine. Women in his bed whose names he'd forget by morning. Expensive wine that tasted like water. Parties in penthouses where everyone laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. He'd wake up alone despite the bodies beside him, stare at his ceiling, and wonder if this hollow existence was all life had to offer. But what he didn't know was that everything was about to change, and it would start with a song. His penthouse occupied the top floor of the Infinity Hotel, the crown jewel of his hospitality empire. 20,000 square feet of marble and glass and crushing loneliness. He had a bedroom he rarely slept in, a kitchen he never used, a living room designed for entertaining guests he didn't actually like. The space echoed with silence that no amount of music or noise could fill. Tae-jin's assistant, Park Jin-woo, managed everything. Scheduled his meetings, arranged his entertainment, made sure his life ran smoothly even when Tae-jin himself had mentally checked out. Jin-woo was efficient, loyal, and increasingly concerned about his boss's deteriorating state. "Sir, the new cleaning crew starts today," Jin-woo mentioned during their morning briefing. "The hotel manager specifically requested we use them for the penthouse. The previous service wasn't meeting standards." Tae-jin didn't even look up from his phone, scrolling through messages from women he'd been ignoring for weeks. "Whatever, just make sure they don't touch my office." He had no idea that 3 simple words, new cleaning crew, would completely destroy the carefully controlled life he'd built. But first, he had to survive another meaningless day. That afternoon, Tae-jin returned from a pointless lunch meeting with investors who wanted his money for another club, another venture, another promise of excitement that would inevitably disappoint. He rode the private elevator to his penthouse, already planning which videos he'd watch that evening to pass the time until sleep finally claimed him. The elevator doors opened, and he heard something that stopped him cold. Singing. Someone was singing in his penthouse. A woman's voice, rich and soulful, belting out a gospel song he didn't recognize but felt reverberating in his chest anyway. He followed the sound to his living room, and what he saw made him freeze in the doorway. A black woman stood on his white Italian leather sofa in cleaning uniform and socked feet, using his $1,500 remote control as a microphone, singing with her entire soul. She had curves that the shapeless uniform couldn't hide, natural hair pulled into a high ponytail, and she was completely lost in her own world. She hit a high note that would have impressed any professional singer, eyes closed, one hand extended toward the ceiling like she was performing at a sold-out concert. Tae-jin stood there, unable to move. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something stirring in his chest. Amusement, fascination, a desperate curiosity about who this woman was and why she was giving a Grammy-worthy performance in his living room. She opened her eyes mid-note and saw him standing there. The singing cut off abruptly. Her face cycled through emotions so fast he could barely track them. Shock, embarrassment, fear, then something unexpected, defiance. "Oh, you're home early." She stepped off the sofa carefully, straightening her uniform with as much dignity as someone caught singing on furniture could manage. "I was just, testing the acoustics, for cleaning purposes, very important for proper dusting technique." Tae-jin blinked. "Testing acoustics for dusting." "Absolutely. The sound waves help identify dust particles. It's very scientific." She said it with such straight-faced confidence that for a second, he almost believed her. Almost. "What's your name?" Kenya Price. I'm with the new cleaning service. Your assistant said you wouldn't be back until evening, so I thought I'd, work efficiently with musical accompaniment. Helps me clean faster. She started gathering her supplies quickly, clearly mortified. I can be out of your way in 10 minutes if you want your space. But Tae-jin found himself not wanting her to leave, not wanting the silence to return. The song you were singing, what was it? Kenya paused, looking at him suspiciously like this might be some kind of trap. Amazing Grace, gospel song. My grandmother used to sing it every Sunday morning while she cooked breakfast. I guess it stuck in my head. You have a beautiful voice. She laughed, genuinely surprised. Thanks, doesn't pay the bills though. Cleaning does. So if you'll excuse me, I'll finish up and get out of your hair. You can keep singing while you work. I don't mind. Kenya studied his face, trying to figure out if he was serious or setting her up for something. Whatever she saw there made her shoulders relax slightly. You sure? I tend to get pretty into it. Full concert energy. I'm sure. She shrugged and went back to dusting, but didn't sing. Just worked quietly, efficiently, completely focused on her task. Tae-jin sat on his sofa, in the exact spot where she'd been standing minutes before, and watched her work. It wasn't creepy observation, just genuine fascination. She moved with purpose, humming occasionally under her breath, checking corners with attention to detail his previous cleaners had never bothered with. Why aren't you singing? He asked after 10 minutes of silence. Makes people uncomfortable usually. Rich people especially. They like their help quiet and invisible. She said it matter-of-factly, without resentment or anger, just stating a fact. I'm not uncomfortable. You're also watching me clean like it's the most fascinating thing you've ever seen, which is weird, but okay. Kenya stopped dusting and turned to face him fully. Look, I'm going to be real with you. I just moved to Seoul 2 months ago. I need this job. If me singing or talking too much or existing too loudly is going to get me fired, just tell me now so I can adjust. You won't get fired. Sing, please. This apartment has been silent for too long. Kenya's expression softened in a way that made his chest tight. You lonely or something? The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Tae-jin actually laughed. When was the last time he'd laughed? Is that your professional assessment as my cleaner? I've cleaned a lot of houses, rich houses especially. I can always tell the difference between empty and lonely. Your place. She gestured around at the expensive emptiness. Lonely, despite all this designer furniture and art that probably costs more than my car, nobody actually lives here. It's just a very pretty storage unit for a sad man. She went back to dusting. But what do I know? I clean toilets for a living. Tae-jin should have been offended, should have called security and had her removed immediately. Instead, he asked, what made you move to Seoul? And just like that, they started talking. Kenya told him about needing a change, about Atlanta suffocating her with the same streets and same people and same problems, about her best friend who'd moved to Korea for teaching work and convinced her to take the leap, about being broke and struggling, but at least doing it somewhere new and interesting. And is it, Tae-jin asked, interesting? Sometimes, other times it's just lonely in a different language. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. But the food is amazing, the subway system actually works, and people mostly leave me alone. Can't complain. They talked while she cleaned, about Seoul and Atlanta, about cultural differences and food and expectations. Kenya had strong opinions about everything and shared them freely without filtering herself. She was funny, blunt, surprisingly well-read for someone who claimed to have barely finished community college. She recommended books he'd never heard of, challenged his assumptions about American culture, made him laugh more in 1 hour than he had in the entire past month. When she finished cleaning, Kenya packed up her supplies. Okay, your place is spotless. I'll be back on Thursday same time if that works. What if I wanted you to come back tomorrow? She raised an eyebrow. To clean, pretty sure it won't be dirty by tomorrow. To talk, to sing, to be here. Tae-jin stood, moving closer. I'll pay you. Whatever your rate is, I'll triple it. Just come back. That's weird. I know. Like, really weird. Rich guy paying a maid to just hang out. That's how horror movies start. I'm not going to hurt you. He paused, trying to find words for feelings he hadn't accessed in years. I liked having you here, liked listening to you, liked not feeling like I'm slowly disappearing in my own apartment. Kenya studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You need a therapist, not a maid. Probably, but will you come back anyway? She sighed, but there was something soft in her eyes now. Fine, but I'm bringing pepper spray and my friend knows exactly where I am. And if you try anything weird, I'll sing so loud your neighbors call the police. Deal. What Tae-jin didn't know was that this simple agreement would set off a chain of events that would cost him everything he'd built. But would it be worth it? Keep watching to find out. Kenya came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each time she'd clean for maybe 30 minutes, then they'd end up talking for hours. She'd sing while dusting, her voice filling the empty spaces of his penthouse. Tell stories about growing up in Atlanta that made him laugh. Ask him questions about his life that no one else bothered to ask. What did he actually like? What made him happy before money made everything meaningless? When did he stop feeling things? Tae-jin found himself canceling meetings just to be home when she arrived, leaving events early, rushing through business dinners. Also, he could get back to his penthouse and hear Kenya's voice filling the silence that had been slowly killing him. She was real in a way no one else in his life was. Didn't want anything from him except conversation and her cleaning rate. Didn't try to impress him or manipulate him or perform for him. Just existed loudly and unapologetically in his space, and somehow that was exactly what he needed. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Jinwoo pulled Tae-jin aside after a board meeting. His face was concerned. Sir, the cleaning service called. They want to know why Kenya is spending 3 to 4 hours at your penthouse daily when a normal cleaning should take 45 minutes. Tell them I have specific requirements. They're concerned about inappropriate conduct, sir. Tae-jin's jaw tightened. Nothing inappropriate is happening. She cleans. We talk, that's it. Jinwoo looked deeply skeptical. Sir, with respect, you're paying her triple rate to talk to you. That seems. I don't pay you to question my choices, Jinwoo. I pay you to facilitate them. Kenya stays. End of discussion. But Jinwoo's concern reflected what everyone would think. What Kenya herself had worried about from the beginning. That this was some rich man's twisted game. Some fetish or power play. And Tae-jin knew he was walking a dangerous line. One that could hurt Kenya if he wasn't careful. That evening, when Kenya arrived with her cleaning supplies and her infectious energy, he was honest with her. People are asking questions about why you're here so much. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable or like I'm putting you in a bad position. Kenya set down her supplies and sat on the sofa, really looking at him. You want to know what I think? I think you're lonely as hell and you found someone who doesn't treat you like a walking wallet. I think you're basically harmless, just sad. And I think if I can make some extra money by keeping a sad rich man company, that's not the worst gig in the world. You don't think this is weird? Of course it's weird, but my whole life has been weird. This is just a different flavor of weird. She looked at him seriously. Are you trying to sleep with me? Because if that's what this is leading to, tell me now so I can decide if I'm interested or not. The directness startled him, always did with her. I haven't even thought about it. Liar, I have curves and I'm in your apartment daily. You've thought about it. Men always think about it. Okay, fine. He ran his hand through his hair. I've thought about it. You're beautiful and interesting, and yes, I've wondered. But that's not why I asked you to keep coming back. I asked because for the first time in years, I don't feel empty when I'm around you. You fill this space with life, with noise, with reality. That's what I'm paying for. Your presence, not your body. Kenya was quiet for a moment, studying his face like she was trying to read something written there. That might be the saddest and sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me. She stood, walked over to him, and did something completely unexpected. She hugged him, just wrapped her arms around him and held on. You need human contact, not just conversation. When's the last time someone hugged you without wanting something? Tae-jin couldn't remember. He stood there stiffly at first, his body forgotten how to respond to genuine affection. Then slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around her. She was warm and solid and smelled like cocoa butter and vanilla. They stood there for what felt like forever, just holding each other, and something that had been frozen in his chest for years started to crack open. When she pulled back, there were tears on his face. He hadn't cried in over a decade. "I'm sorry." "Don't be, that's human. You're allowed to be human." Kenya wiped his tears with her thumb, so gentle it made his chest ache. Even pleasure princes need to feel something real sometimes. After that hug, everything shifted, not in the way Tae-jin expected. Kenya didn't become his girlfriend or his conquest. She became something more important, his friend. His real friend. The first genuine friendship he'd had since childhood, before money and power had complicated everything. She'd come over and they'd attempt to cook together, even though he didn't know how, and she'd laugh hysterically at his terrible knife skills. "How do you not know how to cut an onion? You're 32. They'd watch movies, and she'd talk through the whole thing, pointing out plot holes and bad acting and making him see films he'd watched a dozen times in completely new ways. She'd sing while he worked on his laptop, her voice becoming the soundtrack to his evenings, filling the silence that used to suffocate him. His staff noticed the change in him, the way he smiled more, actually engaged in conversations instead of just nodding through them, seemed present in his own life instead of just going through the motions. Jinwoo asked him once what had shifted, and Tae-jin didn't know how to explain that a cleaning woman from Atlanta had somehow made his penthouse feel like a home. But not everyone was happy about the change, and some people were watching very closely. People who would soon make Kenya wish she'd never stepped foot in that penthouse. The hotel manager, Mrs. Choi, approached him one morning with barely concealed disapproval on her face. "Mr. Kang, I need to discuss a delicate matter with you. It's about one of our cleaning staff, Kenya Price." Tae-jin's entire body went tense. "What about her?" "I've noticed she's become very familiar with you, spending hours in your penthouse daily. I'm worried about the propriety of the situation, sir." "What situation?" "She cleans my apartment." "For 3 to 4 hours, daily." Mrs. Choi's voice dripped with judgment. "Sir, that's highly unusual, and some of the other staff have mentioned hearing laughter, music, conversations. It seems less like a professional cleaning service and more like—" She paused meaningfully. "More like what?" Tae-jin's voice went dangerously cold. Mrs. Choi hesitated, but then pushed forward. "More like entertainment of a different sort. I'm trying to be delicate here, Mr. Kang, but people are talking. A wealthy man paying extra attention to a young black woman on his cleaning staff. The optics aren't good. It reflects poorly on the hotel. On you." Something hot and furious flared in Tae-jin's chest. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that appearances matter, and this particular appearance is problematic. Perhaps it would be better if we assigned a different cleaning service to your penthouse, someone more appropriate." Tae-jin stood, his full height and power suddenly filling the room, and Mrs. Choi actually took a step back. "Kenya Price is the best cleaner this hotel has ever employed. She's professional, thorough, and respectful. If anyone has a problem with her presence in my penthouse, they can discuss it with me directly, and they should be prepared for me to fire them on the spot for wasting my time with racist innuendo. Are we crystal clear?" Mrs. Choi's face went pale. "Yes, sir, crystal clear." "Good, now get out of my office." She left quickly, practically fleeing. But the conversation rattled Tae-jin more than he wanted to admit. Because Mrs. Choi was right about one thing, people were talking. And the more he thought about it, sitting alone in his office after she left, the more he realized that his feelings for Kenya had shifted into something he wasn't ready to name. She wasn't just his cleaner anymore. She wasn't even just his friend. She was becoming essential to his existence. The thought of not seeing her made his chest feel tight and empty. The thought of someone else seeing her, talking to her, making her laugh the way he did, it made him irrationally, possessively jealous. He was falling in love with his maid. The pleasure prince who'd had every kind of woman's soul had to offer, who'd spent millions on entertainment and distraction, was falling for a broke cleaner from Atlanta who sang gospel songs and called him out on his bullshit and made him feel human again. And he had absolutely no idea what to do about it, but he was about to make a decision that would shock everyone, including Kenya. That evening, Kenya showed up at her usual time, singing in the elevator on her way up. She had no idea that Tae-jin had spent the entire afternoon planning something that would either be the best decision of his life or complete professional suicide. She walked in with her usual energy, supplies in hand, already launching into a story about a difficult customer at another job. But Tae-jin stopped her. "Kenya, I need to talk to you about something important." She set down her supplies, concern crossing her face. "Are you okay? You look intense." "I'm firing my entire staff." She blinked. "What?" "My chef, my driver, my personal assistant, my security team. Everyone who works in my private residence. I'm letting all of them go, effective immediately." Kenya stared at him like he'd announced he was joining a circus. "Tae-jin, what are you talking about? You can't just fire everyone. Who's going to run your life?" I've forgotten how to take care of myself, how to cook my own meals, how to manage my own time, how to actually live instead of having everything done for me." He moved closer to her. "The only person I'm keeping is you." The shock on her face was almost comical. "Me, Tae-jin, I'm a cleaner. I can't run your entire household." "You're not going to. I am. You're just going to help me remember what it means to be human again, to feel things, to live instead of just existing." He took a breath. "Kenya, you walked into my life singing on my sofa and somehow made me realize I'd been dead for years. I don't want to go back to that. I can't go back to that." "So you're going to fire everyone who works for you? That's insane." "Maybe, but I don't care anymore. I've spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who manage me and handle me and make sure I never have to actually engage with my own existence. I'm done with that." His voice was fierce now, determined. "I want to learn to cook even if I burn everything. I want to take the subway even if I get lost. I want to feel incompetent and frustrated and human. And I want you there while I figure it out." Kenya's eyes were wide. "Tae-jin, you're not thinking clearly. What about your business, your schedule, your entire life?" "My life has been empty performance for years. You're the only real thing in it." He realized what he was saying, how much he was revealing, but he couldn't stop. "You asked me once if I was trying to sleep with you. I said no. That was partly true. But the full truth is that I'm falling in love with you, Kenya. And I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to have real feelings for someone who isn't performing for me or using me. But I know I can't keep pretending that what we have is just employer and employee. Because it stopped being that weeks ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Kenya just stared at him, her expression cycling through shock, disbelief, fear, and something else he couldn't quite read. "You can't love me," she finally said, her voice shaking. "You don't even know me." "I know you better than I've known anyone in my entire life. I know you sing when you're happy and hum when you're thinking. I know you talk to yourself while you clean, and that you're scared of disappointing people who matter to you. I know you cry during sad movies and laugh too loud at jokes that aren't that funny. I know you're brave and honest and real in a way no one else in my world is." "Tae-jin, I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm not even asking you to feel the same way. I'm just telling you the truth. And the truth is that you've changed everything for me. So yes, I'm firing my entire staff. Because I want to build a real life. And I want you in it. However you'll let me have you." Kenya's eyes filled with tears. "This is crazy." "I know. You're going to regret this." "Maybe, but at least I'll feel the regret. That's more than I've felt in years." But what Tae-jin didn't know was that his decision was about to set off a chain reaction that would test everything. Because when you're a billionaire in Seoul and you fire your entire staff for a woman, people notice. And they talk. And some of them act. Keep watching to see what happened next. The next morning, Tae-jin called an emergency staff meeting. His chef, his driver, Jinwoo, his security team. Everyone who worked in his private residence gathered in his penthouse living room, confused and nervous about the sudden summons. Kenya stood off to the side, looking like she wanted to disappear. Tae-jin had asked her to be there for this, and though she'd argued, she'd eventually agreed. "I'm letting all of you go," Tae-jin announced without preamble. "Effective immediately. You'll receive 6 months severance pay and excellent references. but your services are no longer needed in my personal residence." Chaos erupted. Questions, protests, shock rippling through the room. Jinwoo stepped forward, his face a mask of disbelief. "Sir, you can't be serious. Who will manage your schedule, your home, your entire life?" "I will. I've forgotten how to take care of myself, and I need to remember." Tae-jin's voice was firm. "This isn't about your performance. You've all been excellent. This is about me needing to reset my life completely." "This is about her, isn't it?" Jinwoo pointed at Kenya, and she visibly flinched. "That cleaning woman has gotten into your head somehow. Sir, please think about what you're doing. You're throwing away years of carefully constructed routine and support for what? A woman you've known for 2 months." "Don't talk about her like that." Tae-jin's voice went cold enough to freeze the room. "Kenya has nothing to do with your employment ending. This is my choice, my decision, and it's final." But even as he said it, he knew Jinwoo was partly right. Kenya was the catalyst. She'd shown him what he was missing, made him realize that his carefully constructed life was actually a carefully constructed cage, and he was done being trapped. The staff filtered out, some angry, some confused, all of them convinced their boss had lost his mind. When the last person left, Kenya turned to him. "They're going to hate me," she said quietly. "They're going to think I manipulated you or seduced you or something. Let them think what they want. Tae-jin, this is real life. You can't just blow everything up and expect it to work out. Watch me." And that's exactly what he did. Over the next days and weeks, Tae-jin learned what it meant to actually live his life instead of having it managed. He burned breakfast so badly the smoke alarm went off 3 times. Got lost taking the subway despite living in Seoul his entire life. Washed his clothes wrong and turned everything pink. Called Kenya in a panic when he couldn't figure out his own washing machine. Through it all, Kenya was there. Not as an employee anymore. He'd insisted on paying her a salary that made her uncomfortable, but she'd eventually accepted. She was there as his friend, his teacher, the person who laughed at his incompetence but showed him how to fix it, who made the learning curve feel like an adventure instead of a humiliation. They fell into a new rhythm. She'd come over in the mornings and they'd have coffee together, talking about everything and nothing. He'd work from home while she cleaned, her singing still the best part of his day. They'd cook dinner together, his skills slowly improving from completely inedible to merely bad. They'd watch movies, fall asleep mid-conversation on his sofa. Wake up with Kenya's head on his shoulder and his arm around her. It was domestic, simple, everything his life had never been, and somewhere in all that ordinary routine, they fell in love, not dramatically, not with grand gestures or declarations, just quietly, inevitably, like water finding its level. But the outside world wasn't going to let them have peace that easily, and the next threat would come from a direction neither of them expected. Stay with me, because what happens next will shock you. 3 months after Tae-jin fired his staff, his business partners called a meeting. An intervention, really. They gathered in his hotel conference room, 7 men in expensive suits with concerned expressions. "Tae-jin, we're worried about you," his oldest partner, Mr. Song, began. "Your behavior lately has been erratic, firing your entire household staff, canceling meetings, this obsession with that cleaning woman." "Her name is Kenya." Tae-jin's voice was sharp. "And she's not an obsession." "Then what is she?" another partner demanded. "Because from where we're sitting, you've upended your entire life for a woman who works minimum wage jobs. That's not rational behavior." "Maybe I'm tired of being rational. Maybe I'm tired of living a life that looks perfect on the outside, but feels empty on the inside." Mr. Song leaned forward. "We're not just concerned about your personal life. Your distraction is affecting business. You've missed important meetings, failed to close deals that should have been simple. Your competitors are circling because they sense weakness." "Then let them circle. I don't care anymore." "You should care. You built this empire from nothing. Are you really going to let it crumble because of a woman?" Tae-jin stood abruptly. "This meeting is over, and let me be very clear about something. My personal life is mine. Kenya is mine. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can take your shares and leave. because I'm done living my life for other people's approval." He walked out, leaving shocked silence behind him. But what he didn't know was that his partners weren't going to just accept his decision. They were going to do something about it, and Kenya was going to pay the price. 2 days later, Kenya showed up at his penthouse looking shaken. Her hands were trembling as she set down her bag. "What happened?" Tae-jin asked immediately, moving to her. "I was followed today, from my apartment to here, black car with tinted windows. When I got to the hotel lobby, 2 men approached me." Her voice was scared in a way he'd never heard before. "They said I needed to stop seeing you, that I was bad for your business, that if I didn't leave Seoul voluntarily, they'd make me leave." Rage exploded through Tae-jin, white-hot and absolutely murderous. "They threatened you, in my hotel." "Tae-jin, they knew where I live, where I work, my friend's name, everything about me." Tears started falling down Kenya's face. "I'm scared, I don't know what to do." He pulled her into his arms, his mind racing. "You're moving in here, today, right now. You're not going back to your apartment until I figure out who did this." "That's exactly what they want. They want me dependent on you, trapped. Then they can say I'm using you." "I don't care what they say, you're not safe out there." He pulled back to look at her. "Kenya, I'm going to find out who threatened you and I'm going to destroy them. I promise you that." But keeping that promise would require Tae-jin to tap into a side of himself he'd been trying to leave behind. The ruthless businessman who built an empire on calculated decisions and cold strategy. Could he protect Kenya without becoming the empty man he used to be? Or would saving her cost him everything he'd gained? The answer would come faster than either of them expected, and it would change everything. Tae-jin spent the next 48 hours making calls. Quiet calls to people who owed him favors. People who had access to information most couldn't get. By the second evening, he had his answer, and it made his blood run cold. His own business partners had hired private investigators to dig into Kenya's background, had sent men to intimidate her, were actively working to push her out of his life because they viewed her as a liability to their investments. "They tried to destroy you," Tae-jin said quietly that night, Kenya sitting beside him on the sofa. "My partners, the men I built this empire with, they threatened you because they think you're making me weak." Kenya's face was pale. "What are you going to do?" "I'm buying them all out. Every single one of them. Whatever their shares are worth, I'll pay double. And then I'm cutting them out of my life completely." "Tae-jin, that's going to cost you millions. Tens of millions." "I don't care, they threatened you, that's unforgivable." He took her hand. "Money I can make back, but you're irreplaceable." Kenya's eyes filled with tears again. "Why are you doing all this for me? I'm nobody, just a woman who cleans houses." "You're not nobody. You're the person who made me want to live again. You're the person who saw me when I was invisible to myself. You're everything, Kenya, everything I didn't know I needed." She kissed him then. Finally. After months of dancing around it, of tension and longing and careful distance, she kissed him. And it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been but had been searching for his entire life. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Kenya whispered, "I love you too. I've been terrified to say it because this whole thing is insane and shouldn't work. But I love you. Then stay. Move in here permanently. Be with me. Not as my employee or my friend or anything else, just be with me. Your partners will fight you. Your business associates will judge you. People will talk. Let them. I don't need their approval. I just need you." Kenya smiled through her tears. "You really are insane." "Completely. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." Over the next months, Tae-jin restructured his entire life, bought out his business partners at considerable cost, sold off the entertainment businesses that had made him the pleasure prince, kept the hotel and a few other properties, but scaled back dramatically, built a smaller, simpler life with Kenya at the center of it. They moved out of the massive penthouse into a smaller apartment, something with personality and warmth, something that felt like home instead of a museum. Kenya kept working, opening her own small cleaning business with Tae-jin's support. She hired other immigrant women trying to make it in Seoul, built something she was proud of that had nothing to do with his money or influence. People talked, of course, called him crazy for throwing away an empire for a maid, whispered that she must be incredible in bed to make him lose his mind like that. But Kenya and Tae-jin didn't care. They'd found something rare, real connection, real love, real partnership. A year after Kenya first sang on his sofa, Tae-jin proposed. Not in some grand public display, but in their kitchen while they were burning dinner together, flour in her hair and laughter in the air. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Kenya turned from the smoking pan, eyebrow raised. "You're proposing while we're literally setting off the smoke alarm." "I'm proposing because this, right here, this is my favorite moment. Every day with you is my favorite moment. So yes, I'm proposing while we burn food and the apartment fills with smoke, because this is real and messy and perfect. Marry me, Kenya." She turned off the stove, waved away the smoke, and smiled. "Yes, obviously yes, but you're still a terrible cook." "I know. That's why I need you forever. Someone has to keep me from burning down our home." They got married 3 months later in a ceremony that mixed both their cultures. Kenya wore a dress that combined traditional Korean hanbok elements with African prints her mother had shipped from Atlanta. Tae-jin wore a custom suit and cried openly during the vows, not caring who saw. Kenya's family flew in from Atlanta. Her mother, her grandmother, her 3 sisters who couldn't believe their Kenya had married a Korean billionaire. "Girl, you really went and found yourself a K-drama life," her youngest sister kept saying, laughing in disbelief. Tae-jin's mother attended, a elegant woman who'd been skeptical at first but melted the moment Kenya sang at their first meeting. "You brought my son back to life," she told Kenya quietly. "I thought I'd lost him to his father's empire. Thank you for showing him there's more to life than power." The ceremony was held at a small venue overlooking the Han River. Only 50 guests. No media, no spectacle, just the people who actually mattered. When the officiant pronounced them married, Kenya pulled Tae-jin down for a kiss and whispered, "You know they're all talking about how the maid caught the billionaire, right? Let them talk, I know the truth. You didn't catch me, you saved me." The reception was everything a wedding should be. Kenya's grandmother led everyone in a gospel song that had half the room crying and the other half swaying along despite not understanding all the English. Korean relatives tried soul food for the first time and went back for seconds. Tae-jin's former chef, who'd been invited despite being fired, admitted that Kenya's grandmother's cooking was better than anything he'd ever made. Late into the night, when most guests had left, Tae-jin and Kenya stood on the balcony overlooking the river. Seoul glittered below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each one searching for something. "Do you ever regret it?" Kenya asked quietly. "Giving up the empire, the pleasure prince life, all that power." Tae-jin pulled her closer. "Not even for a second. That life was killing me slowly. I had everything and felt nothing. Now I have you and I feel everything. That's not a downgrade, that's winning. Even when I burn dinner. Especially when you burn dinner, because it means we're doing it together, making mistakes together, living together." He turned her to face him. "Kenya Price, now Kenya Kang, you walked into my life singing on my sofa and accidentally showed me what happiness actually looks like. It looks like burned food and gospel songs and someone who calls me out on my bullshit. It looks like you." She kissed him, tasting the champagne on his lips and the promise of their future. "We're going to have a weird life, you know. People will always talk, always judge. Your business world will never fully accept me. Then we'll build our own world, where the only opinions that matter are ours." And that's exactly what they did. Tae-jin and Kenya built a life that didn't make sense to anyone but them. He taught business classes at the university, using his experience to help young entrepreneurs avoid his mistakes. She grew her cleaning business into something bigger, a full-service company that hired and trained immigrant women, giving them opportunities and dignity in their work. They had 2 children eventually, a daughter who inherited Kenya's voice and Tae-jin's business mind, a son who inherited his mother's boldness and his father's tendency to overthink everything. They raised them in both cultures, making sure they knew gospel songs and Korean folk tales, soul food and kimchi, Atlanta and Seoul. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to the Infinity Hotel. Tae-jin had sold it years ago, but the new owners let them visit the penthouse for old times' sake. They stood in the living room where they'd first met, and Kenya laughed. "Remember when I was standing on your sofa singing Amazing Grace, and you walked in? I thought you were either insane or the bravest person I'd ever met. Turns out you were both. And you were the loneliest rich man in Seoul. Look at us now." He pulled her onto the sofa, the same white Italian leather sofa, and she climbed up, standing just like she had 5 years ago. Started singing the same song, her voice even more beautiful with age and happiness. Tae-jin sat where he'd sat that first day, watching her, and felt the same thing he'd felt then. That stirring in his chest. That sense of finally feeling something real. When she finished, she jumped down into his arms. "Still love me even though I'm your weirdo singing wife." "Especially because you're my weirdo singing wife." He kissed her. "You know what's funny? Everyone called me the pleasure prince. Thought I had everything figured out. Thought I knew what pleasure was, but I didn't know anything until you." "What do you mean?" "All those years, I was chasing pleasure in the wrong places, in things that felt good for a moment but left me empty. I thought pleasure was supposed to be exciting and intense and temporary. But real pleasure, the kind that lasts, is this. Ordinary moments with someone who knows all your broken parts and loves you anyway. That's the pleasure I was searching for. That's what you gave me." Kenya's eyes got soft. "You know what my grandmother told me before the wedding? She said, 'Baby, you found a man who was lost and you didn't try to fix him. You just sang while he found himself. That's the kind of love that lasts.'" Smart woman. The smartest. She also said if you ever mistreated me, she'd fly to Seoul and handle you herself. She's 75 and terrifying. I believe it. I've seen her at family dinners. The woman has energy for days. They left the penthouse hand in hand, both looking back one last time at the place where everything changed. Where a lonely billionaire met a bold maid and accidentally found salvation in gospel songs and honest conversation. As they rode the elevator down, Kenya started humming, then singing softly. Amazing Grace, the song that had brought them together. Tae-jin joined in on the parts he'd learned over the years, his voice not nearly as good but full of love anyway. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Hotel guests turned to stare at the couple singing together, not caring who heard or what anyone thought. They walked out into Seoul's evening, Kenya's voice carrying behind them, and Tae-jin thought about how wrong everyone had been. They'd called him the pleasure prince like it was something to aspire to. Like collecting experiences and entertainments and distractions was success. But he'd been dying inside that whole time. Just slowly, invisibly, drowning in a life that looked perfect but felt empty. Kenya saved him, not by trying to fix him or change him or manage him, just by being completely, unapologetically herself. By singing on his sofa and calling him out on his loneliness and staying even when he was a mess. By showing him that real pleasure wasn't found in excess or entertainment or distraction. It was found in someone who saw you at your worst and decided you were worth the effort anyway. 10 years later, Kenya still sang while she worked, still had opinions about everything, still made Tae-jin laugh more than anyone else could. They still burned dinner sometimes, still got lost taking the subway to new places, still fell asleep mid-conversation on their sofa. And every single day, Tae-jin woke up grateful. Grateful that his assistant had hired a new cleaning service. Grateful that Kenya showed up that day with gospel songs and boldness. Grateful that he'd been brave enough to admit he was dying inside and ask her to stay. The pleasure prince was dead. Long live the man who'd learned what pleasure actually meant, not in the temporary highs of entertainment and distraction, but in the permanent joy of being truly known by someone who chose to love you anyway. Kenya taught him that. A broke maid from Atlanta who cleaned houses and sang too loud and refused to be anything other than completely herself. She taught a billionaire what it meant to be rich in the ways that actually mattered. And that's why he fired his entire staff just to keep her. Because some people are worth burning your whole life down for. And Kenya Price, with her gospel songs and honest eyes and refusal to treat him like anything other than human, was worth everything. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Tae-jin and Kenya's journey from employer and employee to husband and wife. Was he crazy for firing everyone? Or did he make the right choice? And don't forget to subscribe because I've got more incredible stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you least expect.